Deep Green Resistance is the only organization that is willing to face head on the full scope of the environmental crisis.
Every living creature is now under threat, so the planet as a whole is in peril. And I think a lot of people know that as we both talk around the country and have these discussions and do these interviews. Most people, at least in private, are willing to say, "Yep, we're fucked." But in public, almost no one can say it because when you say it, you get silenced. It's like that Overton window. That's it's not appropriate for public. So behind the scenes, everyone will say, "Yeah, it's very bad." And I'm just doing what I do in the hope that this tiny piece of land or this one creature might survive. But no one's willing to come out and say it up front, and we are.
And it's remarkably important. It is desperately important for people to protect this or that creature they love or this or that scrap of land they love. It is, as they say, necessary but not sufficient. And when I was a baby activist, there was this disjuncture that she's talking about between public and private discourse that all the environmental activists I knew would say in private that they were desperately trying to hold on, saving this or that creature, this or that piece of ground until civilization collapsed. But in public, they would always have to say, no, we're not actually against industrial logging. We're just against this particular destructive timber sale. And they would say that in private, but in public they couldn't acknowledge the scope of the problem. And so I thought, even in my 30s, even back in the 90s, well, I'll take that hit and I'll say it in public.
So the analysis is that civilization itself is unsustainable. And when we say civilization, I mean, there's different dictionary definitions of that. We don't mean culture. We don't mean law, the rule of law. We don't mean a refined, wonderful artistic way of living with literature and whatnot. We mean very specifically that the material base of the culture is agriculture. And because of that, it is always about overshoot and drawdown. So it means humans overshooting the carrying capacity of the land and then drawing down everything: the soil, the trees, the water, the fish, the species, everything. And this has been the pattern for 10,000 years. So civilization is a way of life that's based on cities. And if you think about what a city is, you'll see the problem because it means that humans have completely denuded that land of every living thing except humans. Usually it's covered in concrete or stone or whatever, but there's nothing else there. It's only people. And that means that everything they need has to come from somewhere else, right? So the food, the energy, the water, the trees, everything they're going to need has to come from outside the city. So from that point forward, it really doesn't matter what beautiful, heartfelt values people, will hold in their souls. That society is now dependent on imperialism and genocide because no one willingly gives up their land, their water, their trees. But because the city has used up all of its own, they have to go out and get those from somewhere else. And that is literally the last 10,000 years in like 8 sentences. There have been 34 civilizations. All of them have ended in collapse. This one's not going to be any different. The only reason that we've extended it as far as we have is because we added fossil fuel to the mix. Now, you will find environmentalists who say that fossil fuel is the problem. It's not. It's just an acceleration. Um, and it's a huge acceleration. I'm not, downplaying the problem here, but it's not the root of it. The root of it is the pattern called civilization itself. So industrial civilization is certainly, the worst possible form of this because it means that the whole thing is now global. But it's inevitable regardless. So that's the thing that no one's allowed to say out loud. You certainly couldn't get elected to, any position in the government saying that this is over. I mean, nobody wants to hear it. So
So the next question upon which DGR was formed is, do you believe the culture will undergo a voluntary transformation to a sane and sustainable way of living? And I've asked that question of thousands and thousands of people over the decades in talks, in buses, in shopping malls, and just people I meet. And nobody ever says yes. One person raised his hand at a talk, And they looked around and you said, oh, voluntary. No, of course not. And the point is that we will, again, someday be living sustainably, or we won't be living at all by definition. But will that happen voluntarily? No. So the next question is, if you don't believe the culture is going to undergo a voluntary transformation to a sane and sustainable way of living, what does that mean for your strategy and your tactics? And the answer is we don't know. And the reason we don't know is because we collectively don't talk about it. And DGR has set up out to talk about it.
So we wrote a book where we laid out the problem of civilization, why it's a problem, exactly how this works, about the drawdown and the overshoot, which really is visible to anyone who wants to look. I don't think you even need all these words to say it. I think any 6-year-old can look outside and tell you that if you take away all the trees, there's nowhere for the birds to go. But regardless, we tried to lay it all out, and then we tried to discuss, well, what are some possible actions that humans could take that would potentially match the scale of the problem, because we're not being handed those kinds of solutions. We're being told that there's 10 simple things you can do to save the earth, and that if we all did what Al Gore said in his movie, everything would be fine. And you have to know that that's ridiculous. That changing your light bulbs is not going to change a damn thing.
And putting in solar panels in what used to be forest is not going to
Only makes
save
it
the planet.
only makes it worse. So we we tried to face that head on, and you're left with some, I think, very profound moral agony. But we also have our moral agency. So
So,
it's at least worth discussing, because otherwise, what we're left with is a lot of people who say, well, it's over. There's no point in fighting back. All we can do is make lifeboats or head for the party deck. And neither of those is in any way acceptable to me. I intend to keep fighting as long as there is one tree and two wolves. I'm going to continue this fight because this is my one and only planet.
so the question can become, what good is this analysis? And if things are inherent, if this culture is inherently unsustainable, why should we make the analysis? And for me, the answer comes from a doctor friend of mine who says about medicine, but it's true about environmentalism too, that correct diagnosis is a first step toward proper treatment. And if we won't even face the the if we won't even face with honesty and accuracy the situation, how can we possibly expect to act commensurate with the threat? And this is true on a personal level, it's true in interpersonal relationships, it's true with a leaky house. You have to first face the fact that your roof is leaking before you figure out how to fix it. And it's the same on the larger global crisis.
So then we also formed an organization called Deep Green Resistance because people read the book and then they wanted to know, well, what next? And we don't really have an answer to that. We just know that if a group of people can come together and share this analysis, at the very least, we can at least try to explain the problem to other people who also see that the planet is in peril. And that was our main goal, was to try to get people to understand the nature of the problem. Because right now, I think the people who care most about the situation really don't understand the at bottom the nature of the problem, that it is agriculture and civilization that's got us here. There's a name for this pattern of human settlement, and that's it. It's called civilization, and it has been an absolute disaster for the planet, for human society, for human health. Um,
And we're not the first people to
to
have
say
this
this, we're
analysis.
not.
This
None of
is,
this is actually that difficult.
you have Lewis Mumford, you have um, Aldo Leopold, you have Rachel Carson. Environmentalists once understood this. There's even part of this language in the original Wilderness Acts. At one point, this was more commonly understood. You have people in the 19th century saying it. You have people going all the way back to Greece and ancient China recognizing these patterns.
They're
And
like, the trees are gone, the soil is gone, the mountains no longer fruit and flower in the spring. We've killed it all. Oh no. And you just hear this over and over again in these ancient texts from
The
around the
ancient
world.
Greeks.
All of them, they all notice that, oh, wow, we've destroyed it all, haven't we?
And at this end game of civilization, as it sort of reaches the end of planetary limits, you can't have infinite growth on a finite planet. Everybody except economists and politicians understands this. And so this is one of the roles that we in DGR play, is to act as compasses for. I know for myself that it was tremendously liberating to understand that the reason that, as David Brower said, all of our environmental victories are temporary and all of our losses are permanent, to understand that there was a reason for that, that this wasn't somehow accidental. And it allowed me to move on, attempting to protect pieces of ground, but to not internalize the problem that somehow I was being insufficient as an activist, but instead to recognize that I'm acting within the context of this larger destructive system.
So that's what we are. That's what we do. And so we're just trying our hardest to get this analysis out there while there's still some hope that we could do something about it. Um, and we have ideas about solutions. I don't ever think that any of this is honestly that difficult. It's just that every last political institution is faced in the wrong way. I mean, we have an economy based on infinite growth, which you cannot have on a finite planet. And we have a culture based on the patriarchal violation imperative. That's not going to work. So, I mean, there's a level at which anyone can pick to try to change things that is got to be useful. I mean, there's just so much that's wrong that no matter where your talents and your skills and your passions lie, there's got to be a way to plug into this and try to put it back where it might be a better direction. But
And that's one of the great things about everything being so messed up, is no matter where you look, there's really great work to be done. Another thing that I think we should mention before we end this is that environmentalism itself has taken a wrong direction for the last 30 years.
yeah, so probably if you're watching this, you know that global warming is real and it is a huge threat. So I'm not in any way trying to downplay that. But what has happened is that what used to be the environmental movement has gotten hijacked by the climate change movement. So their analysis is different than ours. We both agree that climate change is going to be very bad, that it's creating utter chaos around the globe and may well kill life on Earth. But the problem is that they see that as the only problem, and they're what we say is they're solving for the wrong variable. So instead of trying to protect the wild places and the wild creatures that we love, they want to continue to consume them. They just want to find a different way to power that consumption. So they want to swap out oil and gas for things like solar or wind. A, it can't be done, but B, why would you want to? I don't want every last place and every last wild creature to be consumed into industrial civilization. That was the thing we were trying to stop, not the thing we were trying to save. And that's the thing they want to save. So now we've got a whole generation of activists who, um, as confused as they may be internally, this is the framework that they've got. Oh, we just need to power this a different way, rather than actually we need to question the whole system.
And so, what DGR is really about at base is breaking the old framework and remaking a new framework, or remaking an old framework that is biocentric, returning environmentalism to its biocentric roots and returning human culture to its biocentric roots, and actions based upon that reframing, that biocentric reframing, where we're not solving for the wrong variable, where we're not taking industrial capitalism or industrial civilization as a given and the natural world is having to conform to industrial civilization, but instead making wild nature making the living planet the independent variable, the basis upon which the entire society is built. Because without a living planet, you have no culture whatsoever.
So what I know is that every last creature is now under threat. So whatever you love, it is under assault. And I think if anyone is left alive 100 years from now, they are going to wonder what was wrong with us that we didn't fight like hell when the planet was going down. If you feel that, we beg you to join us because we need your passion and we need your skills and we need whatever hope you've got to bring to this fight before it's too late.
Because even a broken heart,
Because even better a broken heart than no heart at all, because even a broken heart is still made of love.